So it's been confirmed that Keith Thurman v Sebastian Fundora has been rebooked for March 28th. Obviously, Fundora will be defending his Super Welterweight Championship against Keith Thurman. Of course, Keith Thurman, a former unified world champion at welterweight, was an undefeated world champion for a long time, was reigning for a number of years. Of course, did lose to Manny Pacquiao in 2019, I want to say. And, since then really has been quite inactive. He's only fought a handful of times, and his last win was against Brock Jarvis, which would have been literally a year ago, pretty much a year from when he fights Fundora. So he would have been a year out of the ring, and Brock Jarvis is not a super high-level opponent. But again, Fundora's not been massively active this past year either, of course. He won his fight in 2025, and then was supposed to fight Thurman at the end of 2025, and then that didn't happen. That fight got postponed. Thus, they're fighting in March 2026. Of course, I think Fundora will be naturally the favourite going into this fight because he's so big. I mean, he's bigger than everyone at super welterweight, so he's going to have that height advantage, the reach advantage. And of course, he's the champion going in, so naturally he's going to be the favourite. But looking at that fight, I'm thinking, well, Keith Thurman, he does have some paths to victory here, where at 154, he did stop Brock Jarvis. Again, not a huge achievement because who the hell is Brock Jarvis? But for a long time at 147, early on in his career, he was stopping dudes. And then he went for a period where he was not stopping anyone and was going to 12-round decisions and winning fights, but competitive fights against the top guys at 147. And he's only got older since then. So it's hard to think that Keith Thurman will be able to just magically roll back the clock. But will he need to? Because Fundora's a guy, he's not defensively sound. He doesn't particularly use his height to not get hit. He uses his height and uses his reach to... Well, he doesn't really use it, if I'm being honest. He closes the distance, he gets inside, puts his punches together. I think because he's so tall, he can basically just... He's basically got a pick of whatever punch he wants to throw at any given time, which is useful. I definitely understand the utility in that, but doesn't fight like a guy who is 6'5" and can use his reach to stay on the outside and not really take any damage. He doesn't fight like that. And where Fundora is going to be trying to constantly close the distance, I would not be surprised if Keith Thurman could walk him onto something. I wouldn't be surprised, because Keith Thurman's a wily operator. He's an experienced operator. He's a veteran of the sport at this point. And Fundora's been stopped before. He was rocked badly and stopped and lost. And Fundora, like I said, he's hissable. He's tall, his chin's up there. And Keith Thurman said in the press conference, his chin is down here. It's not up there, His chin's not 6'5". Fundora's 6'5", top of his head. Keith Thurman doesn't need to be able to reach the top of Fundora's head. He only needs to be able to reach his chin. And that's not as difficult as you might think it is, right? So I actually do see paths to victory for Thurman here, because I could really see him walking on to a winging shot. Not wild, I don't want to say wild, but a winging shot, winging shot from out wide from Thurman. I could definitely see that. And as good as Fundora is, and he's tough as well, Fundora can take a shot. Let's have it right. Fundora does go through wars. All of his fights are pretty much wars. The fight he lost, that can happen in boxing. You get clipped, you get rocked, you don't recover, that's it. That is the game. Unfortunately, that is the game. But I actually do see a path to victory for Keith Thurman. And it's weird, because probably the closer we get to the fight, the more I'm going to be thinking, well, Keith Thurman's actually got a chance here. But I do think Fundora will have too much for him on the night. But, like I said, there is a path to victory for Keith Thurman there. He throws wild shots. If he sits down on his shots as well, which I think he should, because Fundora's not got huge one-punch power, but he will wear you down. He will wear you down and put punches together, and they will hurt. And he has a really nasty twist at the end of his shots. Do not come into this fight thinking that Keith Thurman can just walk through Fundora's shots. That is not the case. Fundora has a really nice twist at the end of his punches that, maybe he's not sleeping fools, but dudes aren't walking through his punches either. Right? And I'm a huge Fundora fan. I'm a huge Thurman fan as well. I miss Keith Thurman, bro. And Keith Thurman, respect to him, he's talked his way into this title shot. Because he beat Brock Jarvis. Brock Jarvis wasn't a top contender. That wasn't a title eliminator. There is no reason for Keith Thurman to be fighting for this world championship other than he's talked his way into it. So respect him. He's got himself another big payday, and we'll see what happens when this fight comes around. I mean, the more I'm talking about it, the more I do think, okay, Thurman does maybe have a route to victory against Sebastian Fundora. But I'd be super curious to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Keith Thurman can beat Sebastian Fundora, or do you think Fundora, probably being the favourite, we'll be able to run through Keith Thurman? Let me know in the comments below. Another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.